Hey, what's up everyone? Brody here again, and this time I'm showing you all how I mixed and mastered the song Destiny featuring Original God. If the releasing goes the way that I'm planning, I think I would have just a couple days ago released the video of how I produced this. So now I'm kind of going through and talking about the vocal mix and the master of the song in general. And yeah, let's dive in. So first off, I'm going to show some of the back end stuff of what is happening over the beat to add some more room for vocals, like all the processing on the finished beat. So when I exported this, I usually on my beat master, it's pretty simple. I will keep an eye on the levels, and this time you see there are a few different times I exported it with more or less clipping, limiting, etc., just to make sure I had proper headroom. I'll usually, for the most part, just do a little bit of limiting, a little bit of soft clipping, whether it's Radiator or JST clip is another one that I like to use a lot. But yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my Beatmaster. And then when I throw it into the session that I'm doing vocals over, I will run Soothe 2 on it. And I talk about this plugin a lot, but one feature that I think is invaluable with it is the side chaining. So I run all of my vocals to a bus that I titled Vox All, and that has every vocal layer plus all the vocal sends like delays, reverbs, etc. And I sidechain my beats soothe to that, which means that whenever the vocals play, it EQ cuts just at those sections. So it lets me carve out a lot of room for vocals without making the beat sound empty. Because if I were to just do like a static EQ cut, then the whole beat throughout the whole song would be like missing some mid-range or something to that degree. And this lets it be a lot more intentional. And I'll show you a little bit of that. So when the vocals kick in,
cut my heart open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen, it's my destiny. Why am I holding to where we'll never be? Just let it go, just let go.
it's really subtle and you really can't immediately hear the difference, but especially in that mid-range centered, like the piano and guitar melody, it starts to get a bit cluttered and harder to like discern vocals without it. And this just really carves that space away for the vocals to fit front and center without being too much. I love it. So good. Yeah, so next I will dive into the vocal process. And I'll first look at I'll kind of give you a breakdown of the vocal chain through my main vocals. So here's the main vocal for the hook.
Cut my heart open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen, it's my destiny. Why am I holding to
It's a pretty aggressive mix. I got a lot of compression, some saturation, distortion, bunch of things going on to make it aggressive and upfront. So we start off running through Auto-Tune. I'm just using Auto-Tune Access. I have all the different versions of it to like from Access to like the Artist Pro, etc. But a lot of times I've noticed with my vocals specifically, I sound best with just like a 0 retune speed. And this has the least amount of processing, so it works pretty well for me. After that, some EQ cuts, getting rid of some of the muddy low end. I have a de-esser.
open, see what you did to me.
I kind of de-ess at different parts in the chain because I notice that some plugins will bring the S sounds back in. So I have one de-esser pre-compression. Then we go into the compressor, and I'm using the TubeTech CL1B. I have the UAD version, but I know there's multiple versions online if you don't have the Apollo. But I just love how this sounds. Super transparent, but also heavy-handed, if that makes sense. It makes the dynamics super level without adding too much artifact to it.
Cut my heart open,
I'm putting it pretty
see
hard.
what you did to me. Now I'm frozen, it's my destiny. Why am I holding?
It's adding some gain. It's just keeping things level, right between like -7, -10 gain reduction. So pretty heavy-handed. Got another de-esser. I have the Aphex Vintage Exciter on afterwards. It's just a nice high-end exciter.
Cut my heart open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen.
it kind of just makes that top end a little more aggressive. Have the micro shift. I love the preset lead vocal clarity. I'll usually throw on and then lower the mix a little bit, and it kind of does the similar thing as like a vocal doubler or a very small room reverb on a vocal. Just gives it like a little bit of stereo width. So
it's my destiny. Why am I holding to what will never be? Just let it go.
Honestly, that's probably one of my favorite parts of my vocal chain. I don't think that my vocals would be nearly as impactful without. It just makes such a difference.
See what you did to me. Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny. Why am I?
It just makes it sound like you're singing in such a more lively room. There's a lot of sound bouncing off the walls. Such a great addition. More EQ shaping on the. So yeah, I have some EQ shaping on the sides because micro shift adds some stereo width. I'm just kind of taming it a little bit. I have multiband compressor. This is like the second compressor in my vocal chain, and I love the multiband compressor because it does so much for me. It helps me, like, if I hit a note that's lower and has like some more proximity effect to it, I have this curve here that kind of cuts that. If I get a little nasally, this kind of dials that down, and then the high end just helps with like de-essing even more. And it's nice, similar to how I like to use Soothe. I feel like this just helps me compress only where it's needed without doing too much compression.
Open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny.
This gives me a lot of control. Some more de-essing, some more EQ. I like Radiator a lot. This is at the end of my chain. Just some like tube saturation.
Open, see what you did to me.
Without it.
Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny. Why am I holding?
It's like, especially on the louder notes, just adds a bit of distortion. And then we go to our buses, and I have some. Turn everything off.
Open, see what you did to me. Now I'm.
So our delay, I'm using Primal Tap as a little ping pong left and right. I love Primal Tap for a little more like analog sounding delay. Also just like has a little more warmth to it, especially if you start using the multiply setting here. It does some natural EQ dampening kind of stuff that is really nice. I'm using some little alter boy, very subtle, but I'm formatting up the delay just slightly, just to add a little more flavor to it, make it sound a little more unique. I de-ess my delays pretty hard because I find that the main vocal track should have the S sounds, and that should be where you're hearing it from. But if you start to hear the S sounds in your backing vocal tracks or in your delays and reverbs, it makes everything super messy and jumbly, I guess. Like, I feel like if the S sound is coming from one place, then all the additions to your vocal chain and vocal stack glue together and sound like it's one person speaking. But if there's a bunch of S sounds from every layer, then it just sounds like 10 people are talking to you at once, and it gets to be a little like overbearing, overstimulating. So I cut that pretty hard.
I'm frozen.
So yeah, I got all that going on. I have a little bit of side chaining, I think.
It's my destiny. Why am I holding to what will never?
Yeah, just a slight bit of side chaining on the delay. So whenever the vocals stop, it peaks out a little bit. And then just a bunch of EQ shaping. Next, I have some reverb, Pro R.
Open, see what you did to me.
It's like a church reverb. Do a good bit of de-essing on that as well. And then lastly, I have a pitch shifter. It's octave down, adding some low end to it.
Open, see what you did to me. Now
a lot of times I like tracking a low vox, but like
now I'm frozen.
they sound kind of funny, and I feel like they sound kind of funny soloed, but I feel like doing this and layering the pitch down octave with the low just kind of like adds more depth to it, more texture, glues everything a little bit more. So yeah, that's my chain for my main vocals.
It's my destiny. Why am I holding to a...
And then my verse vocal mains are pretty much the same. I do a bit of formatting up on the high singing part here.
I climb to the surface. It's so far away.
I less do it for the formatting and more do it for the like artifacts that Little Altar Boy adds. It kind of like makes the stereo image a little bit wider, and I feel like it diffuses the low end a little bit, makes it a little more open sounding.
I climb to the surface. It's so far away. I slip and fall back down.
Helps vocals sound a little more like otherworldly, I guess. So yeah, that's the gist of the main vocals. Let me dive into some of the layers. I have hard left, hard right.
Open to what you did to me. Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny.
And the first pass is pretty simple. If you notice, my first hook, not too many layers. Second and last hook, I start adding more. So we have a lot more here.
Open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen.
So yeah, I add 2 harmony layers that are panned a bit. I panned them before I bounced them out, so they're here and here.
Heart open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny.
So yeah, a little more energy. I distorted them quite a bit to some decapitator. And when it all comes together,
See what you did to me. Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny.
just kind of tucked in the background. Especially because that's where the stereo distorted guitars come in. They kind of take up the same space sonically. And kind of helps them all like meld together into one big kind of section of distortion, like supplementing everything. Let's see here. There's also some extra vocal layers when the section just left and right wide again. Hard left, hard right. If you notice, with all my vocal layers, I wound up bouncing in place. Just because, one, it saved me on processing power because I was starting to hit my limit towards the end of this. And 2, it helped me just like bake in all the hard cuts I'm doing here. So a lot of breaths and things like noises I was cutting out of the background vocals. So again, the main vocal is the only track that has all of that. I like leaving my vocals natural sounding. In my main track, I'll keep pretty much all of my breaths the way they are, unless there's one. And if there's one that's super loud and obnoxious, I'll just not use that take and record another one. But I like the organic sounds in the main track. And again, if they're in the supporting background vocals, it just makes it a bit busy. So I cut them out of there, leave it in the main. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole extent of the different tracks within my vocals. Then let's move to the bus, because I'm doing a lot of bus processing on my vocals too. So like I said, everything is being sent to a Vox All, and there's a good bit happening here. So without everything,
open, see what you did to me. Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny.
there's a lot of shaping. And you might make fun of me for the amount of EQ that I'm using, all the different EQ plugins. What I like to do, well, one, some of these EQs are specifically a mid EQ or a sides EQ, so I would consider those different plugins. But on top of that, if I have an idea like halfway through a mix of like, oh, what if the vocals had a little less 300, for example, instead of cutting that out of the existing EQ that I have, I'll do that cut in a new EQ. And even if it makes my channel strip look a little bit chaotic, what it allows me to do is have like an undo button. So if I decide, oh, that wasn't the right choice, instead of trying to get back to the sound I already had, it's just a simple, I can mute and unmute and change that. So it just helps me with my process, helps me make a decision without feeling like it has too much weight because I can undo it later on. But yeah, have some EQ, little cut of low end. I'm using the UAD Distressor plugin just as like another round of compression to glue all the vocals together. Honestly, it's hitting it pretty hard. I feel like I'm going a CLA type mix on this song with just like all the levels of intense compression and limiting. But this song, I wanted it to be really loud, really energetic, and this was the way to get there. So
open, see what you tell me.
Without.
Now I'm frozen. It's my destiny. Why am I holding to?
It just really concentrates everything a bit more. Then following that, a little more EQ shaping, some decapitator.
So I will never be. Just let it go.
Very subtle. Well, it's a lot of distortion with not much of the mix knob, so it's just a little layer of grit. A bunch more EQ. Indecisive. Cut 3 times in a row.
Dead me. Now I'm frozen.
A little more multi-band compression.
Dead me. Now I'm frozen. It's my.
Just tying again, like if there's any sections where there's like proximity effect or weird mid-range, that cuts it out. Then more EQ, and
It's my destiny.
yeah, that's my vocal chain. Going into Original God's verse. Let's see what else going on here. I'll just play through a little bit of it.
Just like I push it deeper down inside.
So yeah, the vocal chain here, if we compare that, what's going on in the left hand of the screen, to my main, it's almost the same. There's some slight differences I did with like amount of compression and EQ, just because we recorded in different rooms with different microphones, just kind of getting it the same. But I really wanted to make these sound similar, so I ran it through pretty much the same chain. This is a slightly different, it's like a hybrid chain between ours. It's slightly different from his normal, slightly different from my normal, but it fits both of us. And yeah, we have the same delay, same reverb, same octave down. I do add an extra reverb in his because I'm doing some swelling. Let's see here. Like between the take. It's like a little crystallizer delay. Made his part really spacey and out there. And then there's the scream layers that happen throughout the song from his verse and then the last hook. My processing is starting to not like me recording this video while running through an intense session, but we'll get through it. But yeah, the screams, pretty similar to my chain I normally do for his screams. I like to run compressor-wise. I'm doing a 76 into a 2A. I'm actually using the Purple Audio 77, which just has a little bit different of a color than a regular 1176. And then CLA 2A. I find in like series using these two, perfect aggressive rap or screaming chain. The Joey Sturgis gain reduction, another great plugin for screaming vocals and just kind of slamming it. My lead vocal clarity micro shift. The Shep 73 is like a Neve console emulator. It gives it a little cool saturation to it. Got some multi-band compression on the lows. Got some soothe going on. And I think the last kind of change thing that I like to do is with Original God Screaming, I will layer a pitch shift a tritone lower. And I love the effect that it gives. It's kind of like the go-to, like in a cartoon, if like a devil or demon kind of thing is talking, that's the pitch shift interval they'll use. So putting that on his screams, I think, kind of makes things a bit uneasy. So I'll show you with. And then without. And it's cool. It's kind of like a faux low layer onto the screams. Yeah, his Honestly, I do a lot to make his screams sound huge, but they just sound so good as is. I don't have to do much at all to just make them massive. If I can actually show you guys, my bad. Let's see. We're hitting the end of this. Let's see. It felt very devilish. So yeah, very big song. I just kind of wanted to go like as intense as I could with this mix. And yeah, so that's his vocals. They're also, all of his vocals are being fed into the Vox All bus as well. So the same processing applies there. And yeah, that's the extent of the vocal chain. If you have any questions or anything specific you'd like me to elaborate more on, because I know I kind of sped through some bits because I don't know what level of depth I need to go in for everybody. If you have any questions about elaborating, DM me here, Instagram, Twitter, comment here, go on my Discord, etc. And I can try to shed some more light to that. And yeah, so that is the end of the mixing for this song. And now I can go through the mastering chain a little bit. So we start with, I always start with a gain knob, just literally just volume on my master chain. That way I can make sure gain staging wise that every plugin is being hit at the right amount. Depending on the mix, I like to have about like -6 to -4 dB of headroom on my master chain before adding my like plugins and mastering whatnot. So this is a nice way to kind of get there quickly if I need to. Of course, I'll go back further and make sure there's no clipping and bad gain staging prior, but this helps me do it quicker. Next, I have an EQ. The 808 was hitting really hard in this song, so I added this just to kind of cut out some low end, and then a big shelf at 24 just to like make sure there wasn't any headroom being wasted for low end that's not audible. I have Kramer tape, a great tape emulation. I like to run all my masters through some type of tape emulation just to add some warmth, some saturation, some analog goodness. Got the Puig Child. It's like a Waves version of the Fairchild compressor. I hit this just very lightly here as well. Hardly hitting like 1 dB. But it adds a lot of nice like upper mid excitement. Really brings it to life. I like that a lot. So adding that and just kind of some more energy. Then I go to Isotope Ozone, and I'm running it through a bit of an EQ, a dynamic EQ on some of the high end and problem spots where the vocals are. Stereo imager, just kind of giving the song a little bit more width in the highs. I have some more tape emulation. A little redundant with the Kramer tape, but I like adding a little bit more, just like a couple dB of drive on it. Then a limiter, tube limiter. Next, I have an EQ, just cutting a little more lows and adding some excitement. The song was feeling a little bit dark prior, so I added that. I have a little bit of soothe on the master, just again to cut any a little harshness that might come through. Probably one of my most heavy-handed masters I've done in a while too. I sometimes will keep things more natural, but this one, just with slamming and compressing everything as much as I could, I needed to keep everything as clean while I'm doing that. So there's a lot of processing. After that, I have Radiator. I especially like how the Radiator affects the 808s. It just adds some nice saturation in the low end. It makes it a little more audible. Adds some more like pumping to the song. Like when the 808 kicks in, it naturally sidechain some of the other things too, just to give it more room. Then some more EQ shaping, just because I felt the song needed it afterwards. Then at the very end, I have the L3 Ultra Maximizer. It's just my limiter at the end. Just pretty much leveling it out, adding some limiting, giving it some more gain just to make it as loud as it could be. Usually, I will pull it back as much as I can before I start to notice it like degrading the sound. If you limit, especially with like big 808s like this, if you limit too far, it'll cut out all the low end. It'll just kill the energy of the track. So it's really vital to like find that sweet spot of like making it as loud as it can be without sacrificing the impactfulness of the song. Then at the very end, I have WLM Plus. It's just like a monitor, so I can see all the info of like loudness throughout the song. It has short-term, long-term, range, etc. So yeah, you can see that my during the hook, I'm sitting around like -7, -8 LUFS throughout. The LUFS really doesn't matter all that much because streaming services will normalize it to their will balance them all out to their standard. So if yours is louder or quieter, it will match that. But I like to use it just to know what ballpark I'm in and see how things are sounding. I personally prefer, for my music, sometimes it changes depending on who I'm mixing, but for my music, I like a louder mix and master. Add some more energy. Yeah, I wouldn't rely on loudness for everything because sometimes like just the way you're mixing will make things sound louder as well. It's not just all numerical values and whatnot, but it's nice to just know and have a reference and run this through other songs, reference it to yours, see where you're sitting in comparison of everything else. But yeah, that is my mastering chain as well. I feel like I've only ever done mixing and mastering videos on my Patreon, but I felt like with going through this whole song's beat, it made sense to just make this video as well and share the knowledge with everybody. I have been mixing and mastering behind the scenes for a lot of artists for years now, and really enjoy it. Really like the puzzle of mixing and making some breakthroughs here and there, learning more. It's a very fun game. So I want to try to put on to as many of you as possible whatever tricks and things that I might know. And then hopefully it helps you guys. Maybe someone sees something that I'm doing and has a suggestion to improve on it too. I don't know. I just like to get that conversation going. Let everyone help each other, you know? And yeah, with that being said, if you made it this far into the video, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of the support. If you have any questions, go into the comments here, DM me on Twitter, Instagram, go into Discord, and I'm more than happy to talk through this or anything in general, really. And yeah, aside from that, joining the Discord is fun. A lot of good convo in there. My Patreon has a lot of cool info as well. I'm probably putting I know I will be putting the stems of Destiny, both the beat and the mix, into Patreon. So be on the lookout for that as well. And yeah, I will quit rambling at this point. Just wanted to say again, thank you all so much. Peace out.